Okay, welcome to Puzzler's Paradise, a very alliterative class name. So normally the puzzles are easy, but you're such a fine group of something. I think I saw most of you in a Three Stooges movie. You guys were the jury. Yeah, that's what it was. Okay, so one of the puzzles is pretty easy comparatively, and the other ones, you know, you got 2 chances to solve them. And you see the guy named Slim running out? That's, yeah, Slim left town. Okay, you know, because their chances are slim and none. Yeah. And I ain't talking about John Nunn, who usually wins the World Puzzle Solving Championship, although not lately. Yeah. Okay, so puzzles are supposed to be difficult. Rawr, I'm furious, right? Yeah. So you solved everything right in the kids class. This ain't no kids class. So did somebody bring him Kleenex? What? Yeah, and give some to your brother. Okay, so this is mate in 3. In fact, normally when I show puzzles, you're like winning a piece or winning a queen, but for you guys, that doesn't really win, because, you know, queen up is just like nothing. For example, Sasha knows exactly what I'm talking about. Exactly. It's literally, okay. Now, let me explain checkmate puzzles to you. When I teach a kids class, especially the 1 o'clock class, if it's a checkmate puzzle, every move is check. Otherwise, they have a 0% chance of solving it. If every move is check, they have a 0.1% chance of solving it if it's mate in 1. Otherwise, it's still 0. Okay, now, unfortunately, this is not the kids class. So, yeah, sorry. So that means the puzzles are difficult. That means first move can't be check. We don't do that in puzzles, you know, because that's ridiculous. If you have check in a checkmate puzzle, that's not a checkmate puzzle. That's just silly. So you can eliminate every move that's check, because that ain't the answer. Okay, so this is a mate in 3 puzzle. So I think if I give you 700 hints, you'll get it. No, 701. Yeah. Okay, so what you have to do is imagine yourself checkmating. Now, if you watch The Simpsons, and if you don't, why are you here? There's an episode where Homer fights for the world championship with the champion, who is named Drederick Tatum, but it's supposed to be Mike Tyson, but they can't say Mike Tyson. Anyway, so Moe is his manager, because Moe's a really good manager, and he says, Homer, I'm not going to lie to you. You can win. He says, but you have to envision how you're going to win. And Homer's like this, and he envisions a scenario where he beats Tyson, and the scenario is that his opponent has a congenital heart defect and had to go to the hospital before the match. So Homer wins by default. So you have to imagine how you're going to win. He did. Okay, so what you have to do is, instead of looking at legal moves, which isn't your strong suit, you have to look at moves that would end up being checkmate. So if you could cheat, which is your only hope, where would you put the white queen right now by cheating, and it's checkmate? You. Queen's very good. That's right. Queen C8 is checkmate. That's right. Yeah, good. Okay, now what's funny about this puzzle is, if you move the queen to C8, you can do it in 3 moves, and it's a mate in 3 puzzle. See? Helpful. And there's actually more than one way to do it. You could go queen H5 to E8, or queen H5 to H8, and there's probably ways that I don't see, you know, that also do that. Who? No, because that's not mate, because king A8 or pawn takes queen. Otherwise, you're right. Yeah, except for the 2 legal moves that black has. Okay, so the problem is, this is a very funny problem. If you play queen C8 mate, which is mate, then black is probably going to try not to get mated, unlike most of your games, where your opponent's like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. And here's another question. If you try to play queen C8, but you have the black pieces, and your opponent plays queen C8, how are you going to get out? What's black going to do the next 2 moves so he has an escape square? So he can get out of queen C8 mate. Sorry? Well, you're giving the move instead of the idea. Why'd you play A5? What's your next move? Right. So he's quiet, but he's still right. You play a5, then you play a6, and then after queen c8 check, you have king a7. Okay, a5, king a7. Okay, now because of that defense, which is a very good defense, white only has one way to win. He has to threaten queen c8 mate, and then after a5, he has to change his mind because black stopped it. However, I'll tell you another trick, and that might help you. I doubt it. If you play queen takes pawn check, bishop here, that's not mate because of king a5. You agree. According to that guy over there, black's defense to the 3-move checkmate was to play a5, which means the pawn would be on a5, so it would be checkmate. So you have to play queen c8 mate, but you have to be able to play queen a6 check next move. That gives you the answer, although it's still too hard for you. But you'll understand the answer now, so that was helpful. So if you play some normal, way to get to c8, you can't play queen a6 check because you moved your queen. How can queen c8 be mate, but you don't move your queen right away? You. Yes, but yeah, unfortunately, if you had played like this way of mating, which unfortunately a5 stops, if he plays king to c7, you can play queen e8 defending your bishop with the queen c8 mate. But after queen c4, which is a good idea, now after king c7, you can't do anything. Yeah, that was a good idea. Yeah, without king c7, you'd be right. Because then you got queen g8. Yeah, so that's good. So he's thinking outside the box. He's going to do this mate, and then if here if you a5, you could have kept with your queen a6. Yeah. But king c7 stopped everything. I'll give you another hint. You could solve it if you were French.
Is it pulling the bishop back?
Where?
To c6.
Close. You got to make a battery, but wrong way. No such move is legal. Bishop f5?
I mean, I can't see.
Is the square?
6.
E6?
Bishop c6.
Bishop's, no, that's check, so that ain't it.
Oh, h3.
Yeah, and also bishop c6 check, you can't play queen c8 mate. Bishop h3 is the only move that's made in 3, that's correct. Yeah. And the idea is you want to do that because I said so. That's a good idea. And if the guy runs away, then you have queen d7 mate. That battery is a pretty good battery, but you need the queen in front of the bishop. So you got to put the bishop back. That way the queen goes to g4, and now everything is mate. Now according to this guy over here, black can play a5, and then after this, we can escape. Correct. That's why we had to keep our queen on e2. Now after a5, now what does white play? White has to switch. Queen a6. Again, if you don't take it, then queen c8 is mate, as discussed previously. And if you take it, bishop c8 is mate, because the black pawn is on a5, stopping the king, smothered mate. Yeah. So the only mate in 3 is bishop h3. And the purpose of this move is to get the queen to c8 via g4, but you're also stopping the defense that black has because you have queen a6 check. That was probably the second easiest puzzle. So yeah, good luck to you. All right. Now I'll show you the easiest one so you feel better, right? Got to feel good about yourself. Okay, and this one, yeah, it's the easiest one. Yay. This is mate in 2 because it says mate in 2. That's good reason, right? Does this come up good on the video when it's light in here? People, I mean the lights. The people can see it? What about you? You're from Canada. Can you see? Okay, yeah.
Do you want the lights a little darker?
No, I'm just from Canada.
Yeah, well, he can see the A file well. That's about it. Yeah. All right, this is mate in 2, and this is called overworked. So I can solve this very quickly because I'm overworked. You guys, laying around all day at the chess club, are you stretching your hands up? You're both? All right. Wait, what about your brother who has the wrong answer? Let's call on him. Did you tell him the answer? Did you tell him the truth? You are?
Bishop takes G8.
Well, this is a checkmate in 2 problem, so you got to try to checkmate him. You're just taking a knight. So that's not, then, yeah. Now, I'm going to tell you a secret, but don't tell anybody. Remember when I told you the first move is never check? I lied. That's why this is the easiest one.
Queen F5.
Who?
Queen F5.
Queen F5 is correct. The knight is overworked. It's defending 2 different checkmates. So you play one of them, he has to take it because he has to. He can go here, and then that's mate. And then when he takes it, there's all kinds of checkmates. And by all kinds, I mean 1. Well, what is it? Pawn E6, checkmate. That's right. Yeah, the knight was overworked. It was defending F5 and E6. It doesn't work the other way around because then Queen F5 is in check. So you can only do it one way. Yeah. So Queen F5 check. And if you were in a puzzle competition, let's say, for example, in an alternate universe, not in this one, because in this universe, you're not in a puzzle competition. Okay, if you're in a puzzle competition, this puzzle wouldn't be in it because the first move was check. So it's a travesty of a mockery of a sham. Probably this was a real game. This looks like a game played in the 1900s by 1200s. Could be a game played in the 1200s by 1900s. Was there anybody in the world 1900 strength in the year 1200? Probably not. Probably not. No. Man, what an insult to the whole world. Okay. All right, now we'll get back to the hard ones. This is the hardest one. No crying. You can cry. Okay, this is mate in 6. Now, in general, especially for you at home, the longer the number of moves is, the easier it is. When it's mate in 10, mate in 20, there's like one idea and you have to figure it out. And then you just make the moves. When it's like mate in 1 or 2, then it's hard. Okay, this is mate in 6. And it's white's turn to move. Now, this kind of position, the right idea is obvious for an experienced puzzle solver, which is none of you. So if you're at home and you're like one of the top 20 solvers in the world, this is very easy for you. But you're probably not watching this video, you're probably asleep because you live in Europe and it's later there. Okay, so the reason this is an easy puzzle for a top problem solver is it's obviously zugzwang. Very obvious. Because the pawns can't move. There's no legal moves for the pawns. Can the black king move? No. Okay, so only the knight and the queen can move, but the queen, as I'm sure you've noticed by now, and that was hard to say with a straight face, is stopping knight d5 mate and knight g8 mate. If it was white's move, those moves would be mate, except they're not mate because the black queen is preventing them. But if you moved your black queen, could you prevent both of those mates? No. So in fact, if you move the knight, which has 2 squares, get rid of those guys, that blocks the queen. Knight here allows knight g8 mate, and knight here allows knight d5 mate, right? So this is a funny puzzle. If you could just say, I don't want to move, it's your move, then you got no problem. That's mate in 1. Black makes a move and you made him. Okay, unfortunately, it's white's move. All white moves allow black to move. The truth hurts. If you move your king, the black pawns can move. If you move your h pawn, the king can go to g7. If you move your f pawn, the king can go to g5. If the knight moves, you're not threatening these mates anymore. Okay, and the bishop is actually doing a good job right now, but I can't tell you why because that would give you the answer. Okay. Now, therefore, we have to move our rook. If we move our rook, black plays queen f3 check. Unless we play rook e3, and that's the answer. Okay, after rook e3, black has one move that stops these 2 mates, knight d5 and knight g8 mate. Let's see who can find it. I'll take a nap. What's the one move black can play where neither one of those is mate? You with the wrong answer. It's not the wrong answer because he didn't answer. He got me. Dang. You got me. I've never been tricked like that. Man. Somebody find the cat that has his tongue. There it is. What's that? Knight c6. I said, how do you stop knight d5 and knight g8 mate, and you allowed knight d5 mate? What? You didn't do nothing. You're like Dennis LaRue. Oh, hey, Dennis.
Hey there.
Yeah. Come on, there's a lot of people in this class.
Saying bad moves. Yeah.
You. Very good.
Yeah.
Queen g2. That defends these two squares, so there's no mate. Very good. Okay, now we want to play those mates. So, yeah, it's not easy. Yeah. Truth hurts. So in this position, I know the answer and I still forgot. It does, yeah. Okay, now I remember. So to threaten knight g8 mate, we play bishop g4. That threatens knight g8 mate. You can't argue with me, it does. There's two ways to stop knight g, well, you could check with your queen, but that's temporary. I take your queen. That's not good. So how do you stop knight g8 mate without giving your queen away for nothing? There's two possible answers. I'll accept either one. You.
Queen H8.
You mean queen a8?
No.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, I hope he does, because queen h8 is, that's illegal. You mean here, right? No?
Yeah.
Okay. Queen a8, that's actually the best move. What's the other move? Queen takes bishop, and now the queen, unfortunately, stops the black king from moving. Isn't that funny? I thought it was funny. Okay. So queen e8 is the best, okay? Now, in the starting position, we played rook e3 to stop queen f3 check. You were here. Well, you weren't. Now, I don't care about queen f3 check because my bishop's on g4. Right? Okay. So now, I chill. I go here. And I'm like, all right, here comes mate. Remember, I'm going to play these two mates? Remember that? You remember? Okay, good. How does black stop those two mates? You got one move. Who can do it? Although queen f3 check does, but that's temporary. Then you get mated in 5 instead of 6. So. What's the only move that defends these two squares? Stopping both mates. You. Queen d8. Very good. Good job. Okay. Now, I want to play knight d5 mate. So how do I stop the queen from going to d5? Bishop d7. This is why I played rook e5. Because now if you take, this is mate, because my rook's on e5, stopping king f5. Smart, right? Okay. So now I'm threatening knight d5 mate. You agree? I hope. How do you stop knight d5 mate? Queen a8. Right. And now, you should find this move, because I already told you the answer before the puzzle started. So you could find this move. I'm just kidding, they can't. You weren't here when the puzzle started, so you can't find it. I told them before the puzzle started what the answer was. But they're like, what? That was like 5 minutes ago. I'll give you a hint. Bishop where? Illegal. I told you bishop c6. Bishop c6, I'm guessing I play queen d8 because I just did. So I'll do it again. Bam. Okay, you remember when the puzzle started and I said, if it's black's move, He has no move. But it was white's move. And you're like, how does that help me? Good job. Good class.
I want to play bishop, bishop e8.
Bishop where?
E8.
Yeah, that's not crazy. Then I play queen f3 check. Bam. Where? I'm having deja vu if you play that. What move stops queen f3 check?
Oh, no.
Okay, I'm going to stop it so it,
Rook e5. No, wait.
you're close. You just weren't here when the puzzle started. It's too bad.
Yeah, it is too bad.
Yeah, because then you would have got it. Yeah. What's that?
Did I just stumble on it?
What'd you say?
Rook e4.
Rook e4. This position should look familiar to you. This is the starting position. Except now it's black's move. Yeah, black can't move, as we discussed. Because I had this position, which is the same position, and I said if only it was black's move, but it's white's move. So white goes here, 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 and now it's black's move. The truth hurts. Yeah, and now black has to move, and whatever black does, knight d5 is mate or knight g8 is mate. I guarantee it. The reason is we can't play queen d8 stopping queen d5 with queen d5 because the bishop's here. We can't play queen g2 or queen f3 because it's illegal. Although in my camp, a lot of people made illegal moves, so they could do it. Yeah. That was the hardest one, except for the other ones that are harder. So this is a zugzwang problem, this position, but it's your move. You have to lose a tempo, so it's the other guy's move. This happens mainly in king and pawn endgames in real chess, but this is a puzzle. Usually when there's 1,000 pieces on the board, it's not zugzwang, because there's 1,000 pieces on the board. But here, by threatening different mates and stopping black from moving, yeah, now we have mate next move. Everybody understands? No, I'm kidding. Okay. So, okay. Now, this is a mate in 2. It's white's turn to move. This is a good puzzle, so it's not check. This would be a typical puzzle in a puzzle contest. And this move has a name, but it doesn't happen in real chess. It only happens in puzzles. Happens in real Grandmaster games about once every 20 years. You see this idea. And it actually has a name, what this idea is. So if you do a lot of puzzles, you'll actually see this a lot, then you'll solve it quickly. But if you don't do puzzles, it's a move you'd never think of. If you do a lot of puzzles, it's a normal idea. It's a standard puzzle idea. So the way to solve puzzles like this, where the first move's not check because it's a good puzzle, when it's mate in 2, doesn't matter what puzzle it is, it happens to be this one. The way to solve these is to find a place where all of your opponent's pieces are using that place. Okay, then if you put a piece in that place, they can't do it. There's a name for that. I don't want to tell you the name because you might have heard of it, then you'll solve it. You with the right answer.
Interference.
Well, interference is normal chess. This is a puzzle, so it's called something else. It is interference, but it's a very complicated interference. It has another name. It's called the Novotny theme, named after some guy named Novotny. Okay? But in normal tournament chess, you almost never see it. It's just for puzzles. What you're doing is you're taking a square that a lot of your opponent's pieces need, and you put a piece there. And then if your opponent takes that piece, his pieces are all blocking each other. So you have to find a square on the board that all of black's pieces can go to. Not all of them, but most of them. And that square is actually very useful because black has pieces, he's stopping checkmate. If you took away black's pieces, you would find some checkmates for white. But because black has those pieces there, you're stopping a lot of checkmates. What's that? E4, but I need a chess move. E4 is the right square, so what's the move? Bishop E4, right. Okay. And the Novotny theme is usually 2 pieces. This is 3, so I like it. Yeah. And what's good about this move is we have a very obvious threat, and that threat is nothing. See, I'm funny.
Bishop D5?
Bishop where?
D5?
B5?
No, D.
Bishop D5?
Bishop F4. I mean the first move.
This is the first move.
Oh, okay.
We're done. All right. Bishop F4 is it mate because the king takes bishop.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this is funny because if you play bishop d6, protecting the e pawn, there actually is a threat. Queen takes pawn mate. Do you agree? Because I don't know if I agree. Chess is hard. Okay, if you defend that pawn, bishop d6, then you take away the d6 square from the black king. The truth hurts. So probably taking the bishop on e4 is a good idea. Now let's see who the smartest is. Man, in this class. How many different ways can black take the bishop?
4.
4, yeah. Yeah, you could take it 4 different ways. Now, I found this puzzle on the internet, and this guy was like, well, bishop e4 doesn't work. There were a lot of comments. It was like, you take with the king. Yeah. And then the guy's like, well, this is mate. And he's like, oh. Now, I'm not posting on the internet about mate when I have 30 engines that can just check. I'm not going to say there's no mate in 1 when I can check an engine that says mate in 1, but people do anyway. There's no mate, you're crazy. What's that? Rook e3 mate. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, if you take with the bishop, bishop f4, yeah. Because you're blocking the rook. And if you take with the rook, come on, say the right square. Rook d5 or queen d5, right? Yeah, it's all mate. And that's because you're blocking the bishop. That's why it's the Novotny theme, the pieces block each other. What about knight takes? Bishop f4 works against bishop takes and knight takes because you're blocking the rook. Right. So basically, this bishop is defending this square. This rook is defending this square. So when you play bishop e4, no matter what way you take it, you're undefending a square. And after king takes, you can't block on e4 with one of your pieces, so this is mate. Yeah. So if you're playing a blitz game, you would play bishop e4 without thinking. It's too easy. He's like, I would? Wow. Okay, and for an experienced problem solver, this is an easy problem because they're always doing where they're blocking the 2 pieces. They know about that. Yeah. So bishop e4. And if you don't solve problems a lot or ever, these are like impossible because you don't think of those moves. But there's a finite number of ideas. So if you know like the 10 most common, you just look for them. Okay. Now the next 2 are mate in 1. That'll teach you. This one I could not solve. I looked at it for a minute and I thought I solved it, but I was wrong. I was like, okay, that's the answer, but I was wrong. And according to the internets, Jennifer Shahadi did this probably here, although I don't know. She lectured on this and this is the hardest mate in 1 she knows. Okay? And I did look for a minute and I couldn't solve it, so I guess it's hard. And then I saw the answer and I was like, oh. And in fact, I didn't know why my answer was wrong. I didn't see the move that black could play. I wasn't the only one. Okay, so this is mate in 1. Mate in 1 move, white to play. Remember, white's always going up and black's going down, etc. You guys were having trouble with mate in 6. I gave you mate in 1. That was nice of me. Especially after a couple of beers. You need mate in 1. Now, by the way, normally when I'm playing a Grandmaster, in a slow game, me or my opponent don't overlook mate in 1. We avoid that. However, in the Chess 960 tournament in 2011, I checkmated my opponent and they didn't see it. They were like, what? And they were a grandmaster. I was like, oh, I was winning anyway, but what, mate? I said mate, and they were like, oh, okay. Well, we won't say who it was, but it was Alexander Kosteniuk. Okay, so, yeah. All right, so what's the mate in 1? Wait, large wager against whoever answers first.
Queen G5.
Queen G5. That looks like that this queen would take it. Oh, snap. Chess is hard. I always have a large wager against the first answer. I wonder if there's another move and that's the only one. No, I think that's the only move. When I show you my move that's wrong, I want to see who can refute it, who can find the reason it's wrong. That way I don't feel so dumb. If you find it in 1 second, then I feel dumb. Queen where? Queen A3? Correct. Man, he's always right. Kids class, adult class. Checkmate. That's the only mate. There is no other mate. Notice the white rook pins the black queen, which you did notice because you play Queen G5. Yeah. And that's mate. I guarantee it. I check things with computers before I show them to you.
What was your move?
Let's see who can refute my move. Pawn takes bishop equals queen or rook. We'll make it a queen. Notice that it's check, and you can't get out of check. Yeah, I didn't see that bishop. It's too far away. Yeah, this bishop to b7. Darn. Yeah, I didn't see that. That's too hard. But my answer made no sense, because if my answer was right, then that answer is right. So I knew something was funny. I'm like, they can't both be right, so I must be wrong. But I didn't know why. I can't see bishops going backwards. Yeah. So Queen A3 is the only answer. There was another puzzle on the internet that said this is the hardest mate in 1 ever, but it was wrong. I put on a computer and there was no answer. That's why it was hard. You.
I'm trying here, but
That's okay.
what happens with the pawn?
Which pawn?
D8.
What do you want to make? It's illegal. The computer won't let me do it because this bishop is pinning it.
The king, right?
Yeah, the truth hurts. There's a lot of bishops on white squares. So it looks like these guys are playing Bughouse. Yeah. They didn't under-promote, they're just playing Bughouse. Yeah, actually, you could promote that pawn, again, to a queen or a rook. So that has to be wrong, because not going to be 10 solutions. Yeah. Yeah, this is a hard mate in 1. I agree. Yeah. Okay. And if you like that mate in 1, then you'll like this mate in 1. Oh, this isn't mate in 1. This is mate in 2. I remember it was mate in 2, and I wrote mate in 1. Wow, this is even harder because there's no answer. So let's replace, and we'll write the number 2. That's why pencils have erasers. So this puzzle, I know the answer, and I was like, why isn't this the answer too? And then I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. So I'm actually going to ask you that when you solve it, oh, that was funny. When we see the right answer, I'm going to ask you why another move isn't the right answer and see if you got it like I did, which I didn't get. So white mates in 2 moves. Remember, the first move isn't check, because it never is. Now, I think it's pretty obvious, since we're near the end of class, that this is a Zugzwang problem. I mean, even you guys knew that. And what I mean is, there's a lot of situations where you can see black moving and getting mated. For example, I would like to play knight b3 mate, but black has a knight defending that. Therefore, if black's knight moves, I have knight b3 mate. Also, I would like to play rook takes pawn mate in case your bishop moves. Also, I would like to play queen g1 mate in case your bishop moves. You see what I mean? Okay? And what I mean is, queen g1 isn't mate if the rook blocks, but rook takes e4 is mate if the bishop defends the pawn, which means it's blocking the rook. You see what I'm saying? No? No. I tried. So for example, if we play here defending rook e4 mate, then queen g1 is mate, because the black bishop is blocking the black rook. If the bishop goes to f3, defending the e-pawn, queen g1 is mate. If the bishop moves and doesn't defend the e-pawn, then rook takes, pawn is mate. Now, the bishop can't move because of the mates I just showed you. The knight can't move because the knight b3 mate. The pawn can't move because it can't move. The rook can't move because it's pinned.
Bishop d6.
Okay, well, that's a good answer, not the right one. So therefore, if it was black to move here, what do you think he would do? He'd make an illegal move? His rook's pinned, I just said that. Bishop f3 allows queen g1 mate, which I just explained. I just gave a long explanation about that. Either e5 or e6, very good. Now, the problem with e6 is it blocks the rook and it blocks the bishop. So queen d7 is mate, which is funny because queen d7 is not even legal. But after e6, it stops two things. What? That's a legal move. Good job. Better than most of the class. Now my question is, what's black going to do here? Pretend it's black's move. e5, right. After e5, there's no mate. Okay, so we have to make a move where after e5 we do have a mate. You can't be taking something in a puzzle. Terrible. Yeah. Now the problem with rook h5, see these rooks are genius. This rook's defending that. You don't want to undefend that. You don't want the black king coming in here. So don't move that rook. You don't want to move this rook because as I explained 3 or 4 times, we're playing rook takes e4 mate. So if you play rook takes h5, I can move my bishop. If you don't play rook takes h5, you'll play rook takes e4 mate.
Queen takes e4.
No, you can't do that because the queen's pinning the rook. So if you unpin the rook, I'll put you in check. And you won't meet me in 2 moves if I put you in check. Know what I mean? You don't make me in home? Okay, now, instead of figuring out what you want to do, which is your usual problem, figure out which piece I said nothing about, which piece I didn't talk about that's doing nothing. Maybe that's the piece you should move. The pieces that are doing something, don't move those. Those are doing something. Which piece have I not talked about at all? Which white piece?
The bishop.
Yeah, in fact, I didn't really talk about either bishop. Yeah. Okay, so obviously the bishop on a8, that's stopping the king from going here. The bishop on c7 is stopping the king from going there. But if we move either bishop, we have a lot of moves that keep those squares under control. We're still okay. Now, what's funny is, if you play e5, I have a move that's check that isn't mate, but it is mate because you played e5. And that move is bishop b6. Bishop b6 is mate, except you play king e5. But if your pawn's on e5, you don't play king e5. But, hold on, I'm not done. But if you play e5, you're not pinning the rook anymore. You agree? So bishop b6 isn't mate because you take it. So you make a move where he can't take it. You, bishop c6. Right. So that doesn't do anything bad. It just keeps white's advantages. But now after e5, we have mate because the rook can't take the bishop. We're blocking the rook. And at first I was like, why is bishop c6 winning and not bishop b7? What's the difference? And the difference is after e5, bishop b6 check, I can take it. I need to block that rook. So I play bishop c6, and that stops e5, and e5 was the only move I was worried about. And e5 hurts black because it stops black from playing king e5, right? And that way you have mate. And in fact, just to trick most of you, but not really, if it was white's move here, white has nothing. Black is in zugzwang. If it's white's move, there's no mate. But e5 allows bishop b6 mate. Bishop b6 isn't mate because of king e5. Everybody agrees? Okay, and that's why puzzles are difficult, because a lot of them are zugzwang. You make a move and you have no threat, but all of your opponent's moves lose. Okay, and when you play tournaments, you guys do that all the time. Okay, and we have a name for that in regular chess. It's called domination. You make a move, and I'm like, all right, your move. And I'll tell you when you do this. You've all done it before. Well, not all of you, most of you. You actually have done it. You just didn't know it. When you have king and rook versus king, and that's it, probably usually have the king. But you could have the rook. Maybe you're taught somebody how to play. Okay, so you have king and rook versus king. You can't win unless your opponent makes a losing move. So you have to make a waiting move sometimes, then they walk into mate. If it was always your move, you would never win. In king and rook versus king, you're putting your opponent in zugzwang, usually more than once. And you're like, aha, you have to move, either oppose kings or run to the corner. If your opponent didn't have to move, you wouldn't win king and rook versus king, because your opponent would just keep his king where it is. If you oppose kings, they move away. But if you make a waiting move with a rook, which is the way to win, now your opponent has to walk into mate, one way or the other. And so those are the zugzwangs you guys do a lot, is king and rook versus king. You can do a lot of zugzwangs in king and pawn versus king, but probably a lot of you don't have that experience. Some do. And when you have king and pawn versus king, there's a lot of positions where if it's your move, it's a draw, and if it's your opponent's move, they have to make a bad move and lose because they're in zugzwang. And so this is one of those positions. The difference is there's a lot of pieces on the board. So, sorry, that's why it's puzzle time, right? And I'll tell you a puzzle story before we end class. When I give puzzles to my students, normally they're really easy, like for me, they're really easy to solve in 1 or 2 seconds. They solve them eventually, usually. And then they're like, yay, I solved it. Okay, good. When I had puzzles, when I was working with Grandmaster Kaidanov, it would take me like an hour to solve each puzzle, and I wasn't sure if I was right, even when I was done. I was like, is this right? It wasn't made. It was like, get a good position. And one puzzle I found particularly difficult, and I solved it in like an hour and 10 minutes. And there's 2 funny things about that answer. When I was done, Kaidanov said, that's right. I didn't know if I was right, but he said I was right. And I said, that puzzle was hard. When you were a student, how did you do on it? And he opened his old notebook, like you guys have old notebooks at chess. And he said, oh, I looked at it for 2 hours and wrote no solution. Okay? And then I went to my local yokel chess club in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and the players there were 2,000, 2,100. I showed them the puzzle. I showed them the answer. And when I was done, they were like, what? Why is that the answer? So, yeah. So some puzzles are really hard. Even when you solve them, you know if you're right. These are checkmate puzzles. So if you turn the engine on, it solves them in 1/1,000,000th of 1 second. That mate in 6, as soon as I turn the engine on, it's solved. No problem. Okay? Now some puzzles the engine can't solve, but they're not checkmate puzzles. They're like white to play and draw, and the final position is some positional draw that computers don't understand yet, where it's like blocked up and somebody's up a queen or something. And then you're like, oh yeah, you can't win, I understand. And the computer's like, oh, a queen, yes. And it says +9, but you know it's a draw. Well, not that you guys know it's a draw, but you know. You can see that it's a draw. When it's a checkmate puzzle, engines are very helpful. So we take positions that are puzzles from 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 150 years ago. We put them in the engine and see if the guy's right. And maybe 10 to 15% of puzzles that are old, the answer's not right. Either the answer doesn't work or there's another answer. More likely there's another answer. Then the machine just solves it in a second. It's like, oh, mate in 6, here's another mate in 6. White's to play and win, here's another win that takes 10 extra moves. And you're like, oh yeah. So now when we have puzzles and they're published, since everybody has engines everywhere and they're free, or you could buy them, that's a better idea. In fact, the free ones actually are free. Obviously, if they weren't free, I would steal them, but they are free. For example, what's the best free engine? Yeah, Stockfish is free. You don't have to steal it. Terrible. That makes my life like less worth living because I can't steal it. But if it wasn't free, I would still have it and I wouldn't pay. But it's free, so yeah. And ChessBase is also free. I mean, buy it from the chess club. Yeah, don't edit that out, or unless we don't want to go to jail. Yeah. So basically, all chess software you can buy, if you can make puzzles and you can check and make sure there's one answer, and when I do camps for really strong kids, 2,000 plus, which I do all the time, one of the exercises I had them do is to invent a puzzle. I'm like, 15 minutes, make a puzzle. And I tell them what it is. And the last one I did was mate in 3. They had to make a mate in 3. And then we would vote on whose was the best. And then half the time it wasn't mate, or there were 7 answers. And then sometimes, like, yeah, there's mate in 3 and there's 1 answer. And if it's really, really, really easy, we would like shake our, like if it's like, you know, mate in 3 for a beginner, we're like, you're 2200, you made a mate in 3 that takes 1/millionth of a second to solve, come on. But if you're not used to making puzzles or solving them, it's hard to do something like that, right? So the question is, the guy who invented this puzzle, how did he do it? How did he make a mate in 2? And this is the answer. What's that?
He starts from the finishing.
He figures out some kind of mate and then pins every piece and makes them can't move. Yeah, it's not easy, yeah. But people who just make puzzles, you know, they're pretty good. Now, one of the most famous American puzzle makers who doesn't make puzzles anymore, but he used to, is the Professor Noam Elkies, your favorite person. Okay, Noam Elkies is the youngest person in history to be a Harvard professor in anything. And he was 2300 at chess. He quit chess, and he's good at being a Harvard professor. He became a full professor at age 26, like most of you, like you guys will do. Okay, and he got his PhD at Harvard when he was 20, because that's how he rolled. Okay, and he would solve and invent puzzles like this. That's one thing he did in his spare time, but now he's too busy being a professor. Okay, but he was a great problem composer in the US. So you can see he was a smart guy, and he made puzzles like this. I've made puzzles, but you don't want to see them because you never come to my class again. Like, that's a puzzle? What's wrong with you? It's the worst puzzle ever. And some of the kids' puzzles I make them do are very funny. There's like quadrupled pawns and, you know, just to stop the king from moving, so it's funny. And they're like, how do I get the king? Now, when you see a good puzzle, a good one, like this one, if you ask me, why is that piece there, I'll tell you. Every piece has a reason. There's not like just put random pieces on the board to confuse you. They're all there and they have to be there. If you take them off, there ain't no answer. That's a good puzzle. When the kids make the puzzles, there's like 7 random pieces on the board so they can like trick you. Like, haha, you thought that was the answer, but it's not. But here, everything has a reason. This rook is stopping e3, this rook goes to e4, this queen is pinning the rook, there's queen g1 mate, there's knight b3 mate, this pawn is stopping king c5, this pawn is stopping king c3, this pawn is defending the d3 pawn, in case like the bishop goes to d3, f3 for example, or to h3. And these bishops are obviously doing something. I'm not sure why the white king is where it is. I don't think it helps with checkmate, but I think it had to go somewhere. And I think because the white king is there, an answer that you gave, like queen takes g4, like now I have rook a6 check. So it's making you not able to move your queen. So it's like put the king there so he can get checked, and then one of the answers doesn't work. I think that's why it's there, but I'm not sure why it's there. Every other piece, it's clear to me why it's there. Otherwise, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. This pawn's here defending the bishop. This knight is stopping knight mate. This is a good puzzle. It's mate in 2. There's only one answer. There's a lot of pins. And if you were just playing a random tournament game, you would never think of bishop c6, because that doesn't make any sense. So that's why it's a puzzle. Ergo, puzzle time. Or what's it called?
Puzzler's Paradise.
Yeah, Puzzler's Paradise.
That's a great name.
I'm kidding. Yeah. All right, and again, in my usual spiel, that's the one thing he got right. Yay, class dismissed.